I used to think the saddest sound in the world was a closing door. These days, I'm not so sure. I think it might be fluorescent lights, the way they buzz in an empty strip mall long after everyone stopped paying the rent. One of my favorite stories comes from that kind of place. A little video store in a half-abandoned shopping center, caught between the heyday of VHS and the first whispers of going out of business. You know the type. Sun-faded posters for movies nobody rented anymore. Crooked 2-for-1 signs that hadn't worked in years. Carpets that smelled like old popcorn and carpet cleaner. Our protagonist grew up around that store. He would never have called it a refuge out loud, but it was. Cheap movies, plastic clamshells, and, most importantly, a glass case under the counter where the cartridges lived. Grey rectangles lined in a row, their labels scuffed and peeling, each one a different little universe. One summer, he rented a game the owner no longer displayed on the wall. A side-scrolling action title, the kind that wanted to be Castlevania but never made it out of the discount bins. Its history was written in plastic and ink, a rental label with the store's name, a half-peeled nickname over whatever the box once said, and, on the back, a small white sticker that was never meant for them. On that sticker, a child's first name and a date. It should have been nothing. A little piece of someone else's life, the kind you notice and forget. But some names don't stay where they're put, and some machines don't forget the way they're supposed to. This is that story. I call it the rental sticker.
I was 13 the summer our video store started dying. Not all at once. It didn't just go dark one day. It faded the way people fade when they're still showing up but already half gone. Shelves that had always been full grew bald spots. The new release sign stayed the same, but the movies under it weren't new to anyone. Cardboard standees by the windows bowed in the middle and never got replaced. Somewhere in there, I started to understand that places could be forgotten, like someone had tried to erase them with a dirty thumb. The store was called Video Palace, which sounded grander than it deserved. It sat between a nail salon and a tax place off the highway. 3 aisles of tapes, 1 sad rack of candy, and the glass case under the counter where the games were. That case was why I biked there in the heat, even when the pavement stuck to my tires. NES cartridges in gray rows. A few Super Nintendo boxes up top if you squinted. If you were a kid with $5 and a whole weekend ahead of you, that case was treasure. The owner was a guy named Reggie, but everyone called him Mr. R. Short, stocky, tucked-in polo and jeans. Nice enough, just tired. Behind the counter, there was a framed photo of him with a boy about my age on his shoulders, both of them grinning. I assumed it was his son. I never saw that kid in the store. That day, I went in hunting for Castlevania 3 again. I'd been working on it all summer, inching a little farther each weekend I could squeeze $5 out of my mom. I'd even sketched a level map in my notebook during math class. Not because it helped much, just because it felt good to leave proof I'd been there. The AC hit me like a wall. The bell over the door gave a weak jingle. Nobody else was inside, just the hum of the lights and the sharp whir of the ceiling fan above the counter. Mr. R greeted me without looking up from the tape rewinder, tossed me the same half-jokey nickname he always used, and assumed, correctly, that I was back to take another run at Dracula. I told him I was, if the card had made it back. He checked, shook his head. Someone had beaten me to it that morning. He joked that we were going to wear that thing out. My stomach dropped. I tried to play it off, but my face didn't cooperate. He saw that, paused the rewinder, and studied the games instead. He talked through what I liked about Castlevania: the difficulty, the timing, the jumps, the patterns, and then asked if I'd ever tried a different one he had. His son's name for it was what stuck in my memory: Nightwalkers. I told him I hadn't. The name meant nothing to me. He unlocked the case and dug in one of the back stacks, the cartridges with their labels turned away. After a moment, he surfaced with a game I'd never seen. It looked tired. The gray plastic had gone yellow at the edges the way old NES stuff does. The front label showed a caped swordsman raising his blade beside what at first looked like a bird against a fiery orange sky, a dark castle in the distance. But the title was gouged straight through the middle, like someone had dragged the key across it again and again. The store's own label, Video Palace, phone number underneath, was slapped over the bottom. Whatever had been printed at the top was basically gone. If you tipped it under the fluorescent lights, though, there were faint shapes under the scratches. A stubborn curve that might have belonged to an 8. A couple of straight cuts that could have been letters, or just damage. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was my brain trying to finish a puzzle. The name that stuck was the one Mr. R said out loud. He called it a side-scroller. Said this one gave you a sword and a falcon instead of a whip. 13-year-old me thought a falcon sounded ridiculously cool. He told me to think of it as a knockoff of my usual vampire game. Warned me it was hard as hell, but in a way that clearly was meant as a compliment. Then he tapped the edge of the cart and added, almost offhand, that the box technically said something else, but his boy had started calling it Nightwalkers when they first got it, and that was the name that stuck in his system. His voice stayed casual. His hand didn't. For a second, he held it like it had weight. I flipped the card over. That's when I saw the sticker. A small, rectangular, white school supply sticker on the back, the kind teachers used on folder tabs. Someone had written on it in blue ballpoint, a little shaky but careful. Marcus, May 12th, 1991. The ink had bled just enough to blur the edges, but you could still read it. I asked who Marcus was. Something shifted in Mr. R's face. His eyes went distant, like he'd just walked into a room inside his head. He reached for the cartridge, and I did this stupid, instinctive thing, pulled it against my shirt like it was already mine. He caught himself, smiled too fast, told me it was just one of the old handwritten stickers from before the store had a barcode printer. Then he gave me a choice: take this one now, or wait for Dracula to come back. I said I'd take it. He hesitated, then rang it up. The register made that mechanical ka-chunk I weirdly loved. He slid me the empty clamshell, and my crumpled change, reminded me it was due back Monday, and almost as an afterthought, warned me the battery on that one was finicky. It sounded like a word adults used when they didn't want to say the real one, but I took it. I was 13. Finicky battery was a problem I understood. Our TV at home was one of those thick wood grain sets with fake knobs, the kind that glowed warm at the edges and carried a high-pitched whine you could feel in your teeth for a second after you turned it on. We balanced the Nintendo on a milk crate under it, cords looping out like black spaghetti. My little brother Dylan hovered while I slid the card in. He wanted to know what this one was called. Nightwalkers, I told him, then added Castlevania from the dollar store, because being a little bit smug about my own disappointment made it easier to swallow. He snorted and said maybe this one wouldn't crash when I played more than an hour. I told him to shut up in the automatic brother way that doesn't really mean it. The title screen came up. Big red moon. Black tower silhouettes. A tiny cloaked guy with a sword. The logo flickered like somebody had tried to make it look like fire, and only had 4 frames to work with. For half a second, the flicker shifted, and I could have sworn I saw a different arrangement of letters. 2 circles stacked like an 8. Then the usual scratchy title snapped back into place, like nothing had happened. The music was slow and minor, a little arpeggio that kept looping. Then the menu came up, and I noticed something odd. There was a high score option. When I opened it, the top slot wasn't initials. It was a full name. Marcus. 999,990. John. 12,000. AAA. 5,000. Dylan reacted the normal way. Impressed someone had basically maxed it. I didn't. I thought about the back of the cartridge. Same name, same ink, same sticker. I'd rented games with other kids' saves before. That was normal. Those names were usually Tony or Cool or half-finished swear words somebody tried to sneak in. This felt deliberate, left on purpose. And that word, finicky, kept bouncing around in my head. So I did what I always did when something bothered me. Tried to make it behave. I reset the console, tried every trick I knew, power on and off, let it sit, hunted for a delete option in the menus. There wasn't one. Every time I checked the table, Marcus was still there. 999,990, welded to the top. Dylan warned me I was going to break it. I told him to shut up again, softer this time. Then, because I was still stuck on battery, I pulled the cartridge out and shook it next to my ear like a toy. Nothing. No rattle. Just dense plastic. For a second, I had that awful kid thought. What if the adult just said, battery, because he knew I'd accept it? We shrugged it off and played. It was actually good, in that cruel way old games could be. Everything killed you in 3 hits. Pits you didn't see until you were already in them. Flying enemies that seemed to curve toward your face on purpose. The first night, the only strange thing I really clocked was the pause screen. I hit start to grab a soda. The game froze my cloaked guy mid-run. Pause blinking at the top in blocky letters. I left it while I cracked a can of soda in the kitchen. When I came back, the picture looked dimmer. Not everywhere. My character, the platform, the pause text were still bright, but the corners had thickened. The black around the edges gone heavy and soft, like somebody had drawn a vignette over the picture. I leaned closer, squinted like that would fix it, and nudged the TV's brightness knob just to prove it still moved. Then I unpaused. Everything snapped back to normal. I asked Dylan if he'd messed with the TV. He didn't look up from his comics when he said no, and I believed him. So I blamed the machine. It was easier than considering anything else. The second weird thing happened Saturday afternoon. I was deeper into the game by then, farther than I ever got on rentals like this. The level on the screen was a library, tall windows, cloaked statues that came to life if you got too close. The music was the same melody as the earlier stages, just pitched up and anxious. The phone rang. Our phone lived on the hallway wall, beige plastic, long curled cord. I paused and went to answer. It was my friend Nate asking about rides to a get-together that night. I told him I could go after dinner and mentioned I was trying to beat this new Nightwalkers thing from Video Palace. He made a crack about me renting another vampire game. I said it was sort of like that, and we went back to talking about whose mom was driving. While we talked, I kept glancing at the TV. The corners were darkening again, slowly, like someone turning a dimmer with the world's gentlest hand. Then I saw it. In the darker area on the right, where the library wall art was, there was an extra shape. Not a sprite, not part of the background. It looked like a human silhouette, the plain kind you see on restroom doors. No face, no detail, just a slightly lighter patch of dark in roughly the right proportions. Head, shoulders, torso, standing very still beside my paused character. I went silent. On the other end of the line, Nate's voice sharpened as he tried to figure out if the call had dropped. I forced myself to say I had to go, that the game was acting weird. He joked about flickering graphics and said he'd see me later. I hung up before he could ask more. I stared at the TV. The outline didn't move, didn't get clearer. It was just there, like the picture had made room for it. I unpaused. It vanished. The game went back to normal. Cloaked guy, statues, windows. No strange guest. I told myself it was cable noise, interference, a shadow from the window behind me. Anything with a name I already knew. Words I could say without changing my life. The third thing happened late that night, and this time Dylan saw it too. Mom was on a double shift, so we were up later than we should have been. The apartment was mostly dark. TV glow, the orange clock on the stove in the kitchen. After what felt like 40 attempts, I finally beat that stage and entered my initials into the high score list. You only got 3 letters, so I went with J-A-Y, close enough to Jason to feel like me. I was proud in that dumb, private way, like I'd carved my name into something permanent. The screen hiccuped. One hard blink of static. When the list came back, my entry was gone. The top score still said, Marcus, 999,990. But the second slot now said, Marcus, 24,000. So did the third, and the fourth. Every line of the table that had been letters I recognized was now Marcus, in that same slightly crooked font, the S curling down a bit too far. Dylan sat up, blanket sliding off his shoulders, and demanded to know what I'd done. I told him I hadn't done anything. I reset the console. Same thing. I unplugged it, counted to 30, plugged it back in. Nintendo Pop. Title screen. Menu. High scores. All Marcus. I was 13, but I wasn't clueless. I knew about saves and corruption and bad batteries. You erase the power, the game forgets. That was the rule. This one didn't forget. It rewrote. Dylan told me to kill the power for real and watch something else. Instead, I hit start. I didn't sleep much after that. Part of it was the difficulty spike. Part of it was the silhouette I thought I'd seen. Part of it was this sick feeling I couldn't shake. If a game could swap your name out that easily, what else could it decide you didn't get to keep? Sunday, Mom dragged us to church and then the grocery store. In the cereal aisle, we ran into Mrs. Thompson, who had a wind chime voice and knew everything about everyone. She and my mom slipped into that adult half code, trading news. I only half listened until I heard her say, "Their boy." My mom asked if she meant Reggie from Video Palace. Mrs. Thompson said yes, Marcus, and went on to describe a hit and run over on Elm like she was reading it from a card. Then, because adults do that proud little thing when they remember detail, she gave the exact date. May 12th, 1991. Right before Mother's Day. That poor man. I went cold. My hand stayed on a box of off-brand Cheerios, but I couldn't feel it. I didn't hear the rest. I just saw white paper in my head. Blue ink pressed down hard. Marcus. May 12th, 1991. I didn't tell my mom about the sticker. I didn't tell her about the game. Some part of me was afraid she'd march into Video Palace and make Mr. R take it back, and I wasn't ready to let it go, even after it had eaten my name. We went home. I pretended to do homework. Then I sat in front of the TV again. I had to know if I'd imagined the silhouette, if the name was just a coincidence, if the date was just a date. I loaded Nightwalkers, title screen, Red Moon, Castle. In the flicker of the logo, I thought, again, I saw that stacked 8 shape, but it was gone before I could be sure. This time, when I hit start, the game didn't go to the menu. It dropped me straight into a level I'd never seen. It looked like a street, house shapes in the background, a sidewalk, no enemies. The music was the same slow title theme, but warped, like it was coming out of a broken speaker. Notes wobbled. Every few bars, there was a faint click, like a light switch. My character stood in the middle of the screen. To his right was a tall, simple column of gray tiles. At first, I thought it was just another pillar. Then I recognized it as a light pole. I walked left, then right. The screen didn't scroll. No pits, no monsters. It was like the game had built a little room and locked us in. In the top right corner, where the score usually sat, there were no numbers. Just one word. Marcus. My thumb was already on start. I realized I'd been holding my breath. I paused. The pause bar appeared across the top. The edges of the picture began to darken. Corners first, then the sides. Not like normal shadow, more like the picture itself was being eaten. The sidewalk and light pole stayed the longest, lit by nothing I could name. Everything else slid into a heavy gray black. And then, in the center of the screen, right where my character had been, something new appeared. Not pixels, not a sprite, a burn-in. Like the ghost 12 o'clock you'd see on a VCR clock that had been wrong for years. It was a human outline, facing away. Rounded shoulders. Head bowed just enough to feel wrong. From the hallway, Dylan asked if I was okay. I snapped at him not to come in, sharper than I meant. He came in anyway, squinting at the TV, and asked if it was doing that thing again. I pointed and asked if he saw it. He stared for a long second and nodded. Asked if that shape was supposed to be me. My thumb hovered over start. I didn't press it. I wanted to see how dark it would get. It kept dimming until the only things left were the ghostly outline and the pale rectangle of the pause banner. The text was barely readable. The rest of the screen was the kind of black that makes a room feel smaller. The apartment felt suddenly very quiet. Fridge hum, a pipe ticking somewhere down the hall. Dylan whispered for me to turn it off, so I did. I hit the Nintendo's power button harder than necessary. The little red light clicked out. The TV gave a soft, static sigh. The game picture vanished. The silhouette stayed. It was faint, but definitely there, burned into the glass. A human figure in the center of the dead screen, edges softened like someone behind a thin curtain. My heart was pounding. I reached behind the set and yanked the TV's plug from the wall. The hum died. The power light went out. The outline didn't care. Dylan said my name again, smaller this time. We stared at it. Not because we wanted to, but because looking away felt like giving it permission. Long enough that a stupid part of my brain tried to tell me maybe it had always been there. Then, very slowly, the head tilted. Not much, just a few pixels worth, like someone turning their ear. No power, no signal, no good reason. I dropped the controller. It thudded into the carpet. Dylan made a sound I'd only ever heard when he got hurt bad. We turned the TV to face the wall and left it unplugged, like that could trap whatever it was inside. I wish I could say I left it that way, that I did the sensible thing and went to bed when my brother finally shuffled down the hall. But here's the part I still don't like admitting. After Dylan went to his room, I stood alone in the doorway, staring at the TV's blank back. I needed this to be something cheap. Loose wire, old tube, anything with a manual. So I plugged it back in. The set flared to life. Black, then snow, then black again. Before the Nintendo even warmed up, before any console picture came through, I saw the outline. Quicker this time, clearer, like it had been waiting in the glass. I froze, thumb on the power button. Then I did one more thing I'm not proud of. I paused again. No game running, just the TV, the empty input, and my own reflection mixed with that shape. The edges closed in almost instantly, like the darkness recognized me. I didn't wait to see if the head moved. I felt it, the shift in the room, like somebody leaning closer. I killed the power and unplugged everything in a hurry. My hand shook so badly I could barely find the correct cords to pull from the wall. Then, because my brain was still chewing on the sticker, I pulled the cartridge out of the Nintendo and flipped it over. My thumbnail found the corner of the white label. I peeled. The paper lifted with a soft tear. Halfway. Enough to crease it. Panic hit me out of nowhere. It felt like I'd undone the only thing holding something in place. I pressed the sticker back down, crooked now, a little bubble of air trapped under the date. My fingerprint, sealed into it. That night, I slept with my bedroom door cracked, hallway light cutting a thin strip across the floor. In the morning, my mom came home, exhausted from her shift. She dropped her keys, walked past the living room, and stopped when she saw the TV still turned toward the wall. Without thinking, she turned it back the right way. Just a parent resetting the house. She didn't see a game. She saw the faint human shape in the dead glass and went tense. Called my name. Asked if someone was in the apartment. I lied. I said it was old burn-in from a VCR tape. I said whatever came into my mouth first because I knew she saw it, and I couldn't handle her seeing what Dylan and I had seen. On Monday, I took Nightwalkers back early. I still technically had it until that evening. I didn't care. The store was even emptier than usual. No customers, one lamp behind the counter. The AC sounded too loud without bodies to soak it up. Mr. R looked up when the bell jingled. His eyes were red, like he'd been rubbing them. He seemed surprised to see me back so soon and asked if something was wrong. I set the clamshell on the counter and told him it glitched a lot. He asked which one, even though I was pretty sure he already knew. I said the title, Nightwalkers. He opened the case and took out the cart. His fingers went straight to the sticker, not the label, not the scratched out title. The sticker. His thumb settled on the name like he could hold it in place. He asked what kind of glitch. I said I wasn't sure how to explain it. My mouth went dry. I told him the game kept one name on the high score list, Marcus, even when I did everything I knew to clear it. He went very quiet. The ceiling fan ticked overhead. I pushed on and told him about the pause screen, how it dimmed, how it left a shape, how the shape stayed when I turned the power off, even when I unplugged everything. I added that it didn't feel like any battery problem. His eyes met mine. No customer service smile, just the weight of his actual age. He said his son's name once, very softly, like he was testing whether I'd flinch. Then he softly asked if I'd seen him, too. I asked who he meant. He didn't answer. He just turned the cartridge over and really looked at the sticker, at the name, the date, the little crooked crease where the paper didn't lie flat anymore, the spot where I had peeled it back and pressed it down again. Then his voice shifted back into store owner mode. He offered to swap the game out, reminded me I still had time on my rental. I said no. I didn't want another game. I wanted to be away from that counter and away from the photo with the smiling kid on the wall. He checked one more time that I was sure. I nodded. He slid the cart under the counter, not back into the glass case, into the dark space where you stash things you don't want people asking about, even when you don't know what else to do with them. As I backed toward the door, he mentioned a sale next month, said the store might not be there much longer, that everything would have to go. On my way out, he told me to try and enjoy my summer. I stepped into the heat and the smell of asphalt. For a few seconds, the world looked flatter, like the colors had slightly faded. I didn't go back to Video Palace after that. By the time I noticed it was gone, replaced by a cash for gold place, I was in high school, pretending I was too old for game rentals anyway. But I never forgot the sticker, or the silhouette, or the way the TV glass held onto a shape it shouldn't have been able to remember. Years later, my fingers were in a plastic crate of loose cartridges when it happened again. Not a memory, not a dream. The actual feel of gray plastic under my thumb. The nicked labels, the dried glue, the smell of old electronics and dust. I was in a thrift store outside my old exit, killing time between meetings. That's what I told myself. It was a lie. I'd been scanning for that crate the moment I walked in. Bottom shelf, near a bucket of tangled cables. NES, Super Nintendo, Genesis, and a couple of N64. I crouched down and rifled through them on instinct. Flip, glance, move on. Automatic. About halfway down, my fingers closed on a familiar shape. Gray rectangle. The exact weight I remembered. The front label was for a different title. Sky Raiders, with a cartoon plane. but I didn't care about the front. I never cared about the front. I flipped it over. A white sticker. Same size. Same off-white. Like it had started bright school supply white and aged in someone's hand. And on it, in blue ballpoint that had bled into the fibers, Marcus, May 12th, 1991. The letters leaned a little to the right. The M's middle peak dipped lower than the outer two. The S hooked down too far, almost like a 5. And at the corner, a tiny wrinkle, a crooked re-stick, a little trapped bubble under the date. The same sticker I'd seen all those years ago. I looked around, half expecting some cosmic joke. A banner, a camera, someone laughing. There was just a bored teenager at the counter scrolling his phone, not paying attention to me at all. I should have bought it. That's what people say when I tell this part. How they would have taken it home, tested it, proved something. I don't know how to explain what happened in my hand. My fingers wouldn't close. Like the plastic was hot. Like holding it would be agreeing to something I didn't understand. So I did what I did when I was 13. I put it back. Sticker face down. Like that mattered. I grabbed a scratched CD I didn't want and took it to the register so I didn't look like I'd come in just to touch things. The kid rang it up without looking at me. "Name?" he asked, still staring at his screen. "Jason," I said. He nodded like he'd heard me, like he typed it, like it didn't matter. The printer spat out a thin receipt. He tore it off and slid it across the counter. I took the receipt and left. Bright sunlight, cold air in my lungs, the parking lot too loud, and my heart doing that old, stupid thing, beating like I'd stolen something. On the way back toward the highway, the car sort of steered itself off at my old exit. The strip mall was still there. That was the worst part. The nail salon was a vape shop now. The tax place was an empty storefront with newspapers taped over the windows. Where Video Palace had been, no sign. Just faded bolt holes where the old letters used to sit. The glass was dark but not boarded up. A crooked "For Lease" sign dangled inside. It felt stupid to be nervous about an empty building, but I checked the reflection twice before I let my hand touch the glass. The glass was warm from the sun, and all of a sudden, I could smell it. Not hot asphalt, not exhaust. Inside. Stale plastic, old cardboard, that rental store mix. Faint, like it had soaked into the walls. Underneath it, another smell. Ozone. The way the air used to taste after you turned off the TV and put your face close enough to feel the static lift the hair on your arms. And in my head, or maybe not, I heard it. That slow, minor key jingle, steady as a heartbeat. I told myself it was memory. I didn't believe it. I turned away. Nostalgia is one thing. Standing there waiting for a shape in the glass is another. That night in the hotel, I did something else I should have done years earlier. Not the brave thing, not the satisfying thing, the practical thing. I unplugged the TV in my room before I even took my shoes off. Then I slid the remote into the drawer, out of sight, like that changed anything. I didn't pause videos anymore, not if I could help it. If I needed a break, I muted. I looked away. I let scenes run in the background like a fan you don't want to turn off because of what the silence might invite. Then I looked it up. There was no Nightwalkers on the NES, not anywhere. But buried in a retro forum thread about Castlevania clones. Someone posted screenshots from a game called 8 Eyes. Crumbling hallway, arched windows, stiff little hero, Falcon. It hit me like deja vu. That was it. What really got under my skin wasn't the name. It was a throwaway correction in the thread. One sentence that made my stomach drop. The cart doesn't save. No battery. No scores. No table. Just passwords. I read it again. Then again. Because I never once wrote down a password as a kid. I never saw a password screen. What I saw was Marcus, 999,990, welded to the top of a list that wasn't supposed to exist. Then I pulled the thrift store receipt out of my pocket, still folded small. I don't know why. Maybe I just wanted something normal to hold. The receipt had a line near the top, a field the kid must have typed in without thinking. Name, Marcus. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed and stared at it until the paper blurred. My mouth went dry, and I realized, very calmly, that I was going to start checking screens again, like I'd never stopped. Every so often, when I'm in a thrift store and I see a crate of loose cartridges, I still check the backs. Flip, glance, move on. Automatic. And sometimes, when I pause a video or a game and the room goes quiet, I don't look at the character. I look at the corners. Because that's where names wait. Not to be remembered, but to be seen.
Somewhere in my collection, in a row of unremarkable grey plastic, there is a cartridge with a white sticker on the back. The title printed on the label is not Night Walkers. That nickname lived and died on a local rental slip and a store owner's tired voice. In catalogues and collector lists, this one has a different name entirely. The same obscure action game our narrator eventually found in forum threads and long play videos. What I have is a cousin to his cartridge, at least on paper. Same era, same console, same stiff little walk cycle if you watch closely enough. If you turn it over, the sticker is nearly the same. A name in blue ink, a date beneath it. Not Marcus in this case, someone else. But the handwriting leans at the same angle, and the paper has that same look. Handled. Re-handled, pressed down again. If you ask the people who track such things, they'll tell this cartridge should forget everything the moment you pull the plug. No battery, no persistent memory, no high score table that could keep a child's name welded to the top year after year. And yet, names show up anyway. Not because the plastic is haunted in the way people like to imagine, but because grief is. Grief repeats. Grief labels. Grief presses a name down so many times the corner wrinkles. So many times the paper learns the shape of a thumb. Store inventories get boxed up and shipped to thrift chains, church bazaars, online auctions. Somewhere, someone will push a grey rectangle into an aging machine, see a screen do something it shouldn't, and pause long enough for the edges of the picture to close in. I can't tell you what it is. I can only tell you this. If you find yourself digging through a bin of old cartridges and you see a white sticker with a name and a date, you'll feel it before you read it. A little drop in your stomach, the sense that this object remembers someone in a way it shouldn't. If you recognize the handwriting, ask yourself one small question before you take it home. When you pause the game, who exactly do you think is waiting for you to come back?